down, please.
No, listen to me. I need to change the story, Dad, please.
That was a hell of a song. That Jade sure can play.
Welcome, fellow crows, to New Watchers on the Wall. Today we have a very special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, the person who haunts our dreams. Everybody, please welcome Douglas E. Hughes, the man in the yellow suit from our beloved show From. Round of applause.
Wow, double.
I'm scared to touch the button because I always touch the wrong button.
Okay, look, we got to start over. I didn't press the wrong button, Doug. Golly.
We are notorious for pressing the wrong button.
And we'll welcome you the right way, Doug. Oh my goodness. We always are messing up.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
sorry. All right.
For you. Okay.
I don't need to be anywhere, so we're all
But we want to thank you so much for joining us. It is the holiday season, and we're so grateful that you joined us. And like I said, the man in yellow, I mean, I don't think we've ever seen a character hit the scene with such steam as the man in yellow did at the end of From season 3. Yes, just absolutely amazing. And what we want to do before we get into From, just to learn a little bit more about you, the person, and just a little bit how you got into acting and things like that. Off the air, we were talking a little bit about voice acting. You said you did that, but just talk a little bit about how you started acting, why you started acting, and what that experience has been like.
Well, it's funny. I don't know where the acting bug comes from. It certainly doesn't come from my family. I come from a very blue collar background. My dad ran a gas station. Mom was a housewife, and it was me and my 5 brothers. And there was something, I can't even tell you, like it happened so early in my life, I can't even pinpoint when it was, but I just always assumed that I was going to be a performer of some kind. I remember my parents used to have a lot of these Alan Sherman records, and I used to play them over and over again because they were funny. And I mean, I didn't get a lot of the jokes, but I knew they were funny. And I liked the songs. They were parodies of popular tunes and stuff like that. And I listened to those records over and over until I'd like memorized every tune on them. And when I was about 8 years old, I remember going up to the principal in my school and saying that maybe one day we could have an assembly in the gym where I would do a selection of Alan Sherman tunes for the school. And he says, okay, Doug, that's a great idea. I tell you what, you get the band together and get it all organized. And when you got it ready, you just let me know and we'll set it up. And I was like, okay. Needless to say, it never happened. But I remember when they were doing a performance in my grade school, I was in 5th grade, I think, when it happened. It was an operetta. And I couldn't sing to save my life when I was a kid. But it's like, they're doing a show. I got to be in it. And so the only part I could do was they made me a dancer. And I was the only male dancer. It was me and 6 girls.
What kind of dancing were you doing?
Oh, I don't know. We were all dressed in black and like waving these streamers around. And,
very interpretive. Very Martha Graham.
But the bottom line was just like, if they're doing a show, I have to be in it, and I have no idea where that came from, but it's been there as far back as I can remember. And I knew before I started high school that I was going to study theater after I got out of high school. And that's what I did. Went straight into theater school. And then when I left theater school, started my career.
So you're a theater kid.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes, the vast majority of my background has been in theater.
So what has been your favorite thing to perform in theater?
Oh boy, it's hard to pick just one. There's so many that were so much fun. We did a production. I worked at the Shaw Festival for 13 seasons, and I think it was my 4th season there. We did a production of You Can't Take It With You, this Kaufman and Hart play from the 30s, I think. And it was so much fun. They brought it back the second year because it was so popular. So we got to do it twice, which was great. That one was certainly a highlight. There have been a couple of musicals I've been involved in that were great too. One of them happened here in Toronto back in 2008. It was a production of the musical Man of No Importance. and I got to play the man. And it was one of those labors of love. And then a couple of years after that, actually, I think the year after that, I did a production of The Drowsy Chaperone. We did it in Winnipeg one year, and the following year I did it in Calgary. And that one was also just a scream. That's one of the funniest, most joyous things I've ever been involved in.
It's awesome. We just recently did an interview with Rodrigo from the show Earth Abides, which is also on MGM.
Mm-hmm.
And he was sharing how he actually went to school for acting and things like that too. And it's always interesting to hear people who take that traditional route, because a lot of times you seem to hear people who take like a non-traditional route who had no idea they wanted to act, and then they somehow fell into it or things happen. So that's really cool that you actually did that. And it sounds like your sense of humor is able to come out too, because as we've been talking on Instagram and even behind the scenes, like you have such a funny sense of humor. So talk a little bit about like some of the projects that you've worked. You say you do like a lot of voice acting. What are some projects that you've worked on right before you started working with the show?
Well, I have to say the voiceover jobs have been pretty few and far between lately, but I did a fun gig with Ubisoft a few years ago. I did a bunch of voices for the game Far Cry 6. And doing voiceover for video games is a fascinating experience from an acting point of view, because it is so fast paced. You don't have time to think. And in a way, it's a wonderful acting exercise, because you can't get caught up in your own head. There's no time for that. You're not allowed to overthink things because there just isn't time, And so it's all instinct and it's all straight from the gut. And it's one of the purest acting experiences I think I've ever had, doing voiceover for video games, oddly enough. But I think it's just because of the setup. It's so fast paced that you don't have time to get in your own way. So I've done that. I've done a number of narrations of audiobooks as well.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow. I could see that with your voice. I could definitely.
I'm a big audiobook fan.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a really interesting job too. It's incredibly intense. It's
I've heard.
It takes a lot of focus, and it's one of those things that you do a day to that and your brain is just fried at the end of the day,
Yeah.
But it's really rewarding. It requires a lot of prep, which I don't mind. It's a nice way to stretch some muscles that I don't get to stretch very often, So there's been that. There've been a few commercials along the way as well. And voiceovers for some kids shows. The Cat in the Hat knows a lot about that. I did a couple of that.
That's awesome.
Man, that's so cool.
So talk a little bit about like the show, right? So show is a very popular show, and the show just grew exponentially. I remember during season 1, we were one of the few channels that was actually reviewing the show in season 1. And I would say probably at season 2, that's when you started to see everybody and their mama started to actually review the show. And now if you type in From on YouTube, you're likely to get 1,000 hits of people reviewing and talking about the show. And that's our dog making a bunch of noise. Jamison, can you come get Lucky real quick? But I wanted to ask you, and we're going to talk about your role, but were you a fan of the show? Like as you were, just doing you, and what was it like to see the show grow, or how did you become, not affiliated, but discover the show?
I actually auditioned for the first season.
Oh.
I was called to audition for, it turned out to be 2 roles. I auditioned for one, and it was an amazing experience, because when I got the sides for the audition, I read the scene and I went, who's the genius who wrote this? This stuff is amazing. I would love to do this. So I did the first audition. I got a call back, and after the callback, they said, okay, we're going to go a different direction with that character. We want you to read another character. So I did the same thing again with another character. I think I was called back for that one too. Didn't get either of them. And that was that. And in Canada, From at the time was only on Paramount Plus, which I didn't have that streaming service. So I wasn't actually able to see it, but I was intensely curious about it, because after having read these scenes and everything they sent me was just, the writing was so exceptional. I just said, oh my God, I would kill to be in this thing. And I was very disappointed when it didn't happen, but I just kind of forgot about it, because, that was that. So 3.5 years later, my agents get a call, and it was an availability check. This was back in like March, I think. Somebody wanted to know if I was free for a month. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm free for the rest of my life. No problem. And they didn't say what it was for. It was just, and this often happens with availability checks, it's just the casting people wanting to know if you're available for something that's coming up. And so I said, yeah, I'm available. So about 3 weeks went by, didn't hear anything about it. And I thought, oh, well, they must have cast whatever it is by now. So I had an opportunity to do a day's work on something. And I called my agent to see if it would be okay, because we were still within this 4-week window. And she said, no, you're still being considered for this thing. And very shortly after that, and initially all they asked for was demo reels. So whoever was being considered had to send in their demo reels. But then she called me at the end of this week and said, they actually want to audition you now. They're going to audition you on Saturday. And that was when I found out it was for From. And that's when I got nervous, because I thought, okay, this is strike 3. I can't mess this up. And so I was sent the sides, I guess, on the Friday. Had the audition with Jack by Zoom on Saturday. We did 2 takes of the scene. The whole thing was maybe 5 minutes long, and then that was it. I was out of there. And a couple hours later, my agent called and said, you're on hold, which is usually the kiss of death, because it usually means you and like 2 or 3 other guys are on hold, and 9 times out of 10, it goes to one of the other guys, So I thought, oh yeah, well, fine, whatever. And then about 10:30 that night, she called me and she said, you've been booked. You're flying to Halifax first thing Monday morning.
Wow.
And at that point, I had never seen an episode of From. So I quickly signed up for Paramount Plus, and I watched a couple of episodes, I think, on the Sunday as I was packing and getting ready to leave town. And then I got to Halifax the next day, and I had a costume fitting and a makeup call and stuff. And I can't remember if the makeup call was the same day, but whatever. I managed to watch a couple more episodes on that day. I watched the pilot and the last episode of season 1, and then I watched the first and last episodes of season 2, just to get a general idea of what was going on. And that was it. That's all I got to see before we shot the scene. So,
wow.
So before you shot the scene, did they give you any backstory about the man in the yellow suit to help you kind of act with your to add to your performance?
Well, of course, I was sent the script for the episode, but there's no mention of him until he shows up. So
Right.
no, I was basically going on what I had done in the audition, And John Griffin was there that day, as was Jack, of course. He was directing it. And we had a chat, which was great, because I finally got to tell him, what a genius I thought he was. But no, we didn't talk about the scene really at all. And Jack gave me various pieces of directions as we were shooting it. But in terms of how to interpret the character, I was basically left to my own devices.
Wow.
Yes.
So but the thing is, when you read that scene, it's so clear what the intent is.
Yeah.
It didn't really take a lot to put it together,
Yeah, because there's so many people who talk about the show and review the show, and we have all of these theories, some of them good, some of them bad, some of them really bad. And a lot of them are wrapped around the man in the yellow suit with these drawings. And so your character was a huge mystery. And a lot of people were like, are we going to see the man in the yellow suit? I think we are. I think this is connected and da 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 da. And so when you finally came on screen, like it was just like, I told you, we were right.
Crazy.
And so just, even when you came on screen, it was very short, but there was so much gravitas to this character, and he was just so freaking scary. I was like, this is gonna be bad. This is bad. I'm just remembering freaking out now, and I'm just freaking out right now. So when I was watching it,
it was good.
It was so good.
It was good because there was a couple of things that they did this season that I was happy that they did. One of which was us figuring out who threw Boyd that rope.
Yes.
I was so afraid that was something that, just wasn't going to be addressed. Because, there was a couple of things in season 2, like, and maybe they'll address it in the next season, like, trying to kill the monsters with the bile, right? They tried it once and then they kind of let the idea go. Earlier in last season, Boyd was considering trying to kill a monster, and they kind of let the idea go. And I just kind of thought that the whole rope being thrown down to Boyd would just be one of those things that just gets let go. And yet one of the other things I thought would be let go was, whoever called Jim when they set up that tower in season 1,
Mhm.
and he was like,
Your
"Yo,
wife
what?"
shouldn't be digging that hole, Jim.
Well, say it for us one more time, Doug. Say it for us, Doug. Say it.
No, I'm not going to do that. I am not going to do that. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Oh man.
That's
Oh,
just
we
as a
tried.
matter of policy. I won't go there. I'm sorry. But
We
I'll tell you a funny thing about that moment, because that just happened to be one of the episodes I watched. It was the last episode of season 1. And so I thanked God that that was one of the ones I chose, because I looked at that scene and I went, okay, now I can, I just ran that conversation between Jim and the voice on the radio over and over again, trying to match the cadence and the quality of that actor's voice to the extent that I could, you know? So, I mean, it was always going to be a different voice, but I tried to get it as close as I could to what I heard in that
It
scene.
sounded the same to me when you said it. I mean, it sounded great. I mean, and it seems to me like the Man in Yellow is like maybe the puppet master of all this. So I can't wait to see you more in this show.
Yeah, because everybody was waiting on that big bad. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like I don't. I'm gonna ask you a question. If you could talk about it, you can. If you can't, you can't. Right? So, like when I first saw the Man in Yellow on screen, he kind of reminded me of like a Daywalker almost. And just to kind of like the monsters in the show, they're not able to. Well, we've never seen them come out in the daytime.
Right.
Can they come out in the daytime? Maybe they can. Maybe they're playing a game, making the humans think they can't come out. Right? We don't know. Maybe we'll figure it out. But when I saw you as the Man in Yellow walking out, I immediately kind of thought of like a Daywalker, almost like in the movie Blade, how Wesley Snipes in the movie Blade, you know, because his mom was bitten when he was in a womb, it allowed him to kind of have the best of both worlds. So he's like a Daywalker. Is the Man in Yellow a Daywalker? Is he like what is he?
Well, I don't know. I know no more about the Man in Yellow than anyone who has seen the season 3 finale, because that's all I know is what was in that scene, what was in the dialogue. You know, there was no great description of him at the beginning to give us any hint as to who this guy was. You know, he was just the man in the yellow suit. Having said that, I mean, my impression, given the context, was okay. Obviously, the rules are different for this guy. This is not like your typical monster. But beyond that, I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine, you know?
And I think the writers on From do an excellent job of this, because it's completely made the fans of the show insane, where they don't really give us much of anything. And so we're left to come up with all of these theories, and just watching different interviews, it seems like they do the same thing to the actors in the show. So they just have to go from like, I don't know any more than anybody else does. And it's adding a lot to the show.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't really need to know. I have to say, you know, I'm fascinated by that aspect of the show, because it takes so much care and so much precision to lay down all of those plot lines and all those different threads and eventually tie them up. I would suggest to you, I have no inside information to base this on. This is just my own conjecture, but I would say any concerns you have about loose ends that still exist will probably get dealt with in future seasons. As to when or how, I have no idea. But that's my gut instinct, because things like the voice on the radio, you know, it took 2 seasons, but we finally got an answer to that, you know. And I mean, there are all kinds of examples of that all through the show, I think. And it's a really interesting aspect of the show, as I say, because it requires such, you know, keeping all those balls in the air at the same time. I don't know how they do it. I mean, you know, a lot of late nights, I think. But it's a fascinating aspect of the series. But to me, I'm far more interested in the characters and the interrelationships between the characters.
And then, have you since, I know that you said initially you hadn't got a chance to watch it. Have you since kind of watched a vast majority of all the seasons?
Oh, yes. As soon as I got home, I watched the entire thing. You know?
Oh, okay.
And then, of course, I had to wait for season 3, but I was like everybody else, waiting every week as the episodes came out and watching them as soon as I could. So, yeah, I'm totally up to speed now.
Okay. If so, in that case, what was maybe your favorite moment of the last season, but then also maybe a favorite moment from any of the seasons before as well?
Oh boy. I have to say the scene between Victor and his father.
Yeah.
That just did me in. Like, I can't tell you the effect that had on me. I was a puddle.
Yeah. Everybody saw that scene and was like, "Oh my god," like shedding tears because it was just so tender and amazing, and it was so brilliantly acted.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you have two. I mean, the level right across the board in the series, I think, is amazing. It's just such a fine stable of actors.
Oh yeah, the acting is
Um,
top tier on the show.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then I know it's the holiday season. Won't want to hold you too long. But wanted to ask you, how has maybe, I would say that From is probably, I think it was in the top 3 series at the time that, when it was airing. People like to watch From, people are watching Silo. What's the other? Severance, things like so. From is in the top sphere when you talk about TV series in general, right?
Thinking show.
Yeah. How has your stardom or whatever, do people now recognize you when you're out, or has life changed at all?
Not my everyday life. The only thing that's changed has been my online life. That has changed dramatically. I didn't bother with Instagram before this show, but because of it, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to step up here and establish a bit of a presence on there. And it's kind of like been walking into a tsunami, like it's the response on there has been really kind of overwhelming. But even having said that, I still have a relatively small number of followers. I mean, you got to remember, I was on screen for a total of something like 43 seconds, and as big an effect as it's had, it was very short-lived. And so, I mean, there was a lot of excitement. There was a big flurry when the finale came out for season 3, but it very quickly died down. And the other thing is, in Canada, because From is only on Paramount Plus, at least the most recent season, lots of people aren't aware of it. Even actor friends of mine have never heard of it, and so I'm talking to people about it. I'm going, you guys have got to check this series out. It's amazing. Now the first 2 seasons are available on Netflix, so it's getting much wider distribution now, but it hasn't had that same effect in Canada.
You know what? It's not out in Netflix in America.
No, it's not.
So, I mean, get ready, because once it hits in America,
Netflix,
it's gonna go crazy. It's gonna go crazy.
But I wonder if they would ever do that, because it's really almost like it's a prime MGM Studios kind of a product.
Well, they've done it with other shows.
Yeah.
We'll
see. Maybe they'll do something like that during the last season, right before the last season airs, to really get everybody into it. But yeah, man, that's awesome and really cool to hear. But it's just been an exciting, just process overall. And then, that one final question, like I said, it's the holidays. We don't want to hold people too long, but was there a final moment? Just you gave us your favorite moment in the final season. Was there a favorite moment from anywhere throughout the rest of the seasons?
Oh boy, I would really have to think about that. There are so many, so many to choose from.
There are.
I have to say, Dale's death was pretty noteworthy. I mean, what a way to go!
Yes, that scene was insane. Like I just visually, it was very striking and terrifying.
Yeah.
I actually know Cliff. Cliff and I spent a year together at the Stratford Festival.
Nice.
And after I saw that episode, I sent him a message on Messenger, I think, and I said, "Yeah, just saw episode 5, Cliff. You rock."
Literally, figuratively.
Yeah.
No, that is so cool, man. Do you want to shout out your IG for the people?
I'm sorry?
Would you like to share your Instagram, your IG for the audience?
It's just my name, Douglas_E_Hughes.
Okay.
Nice.
So you guys.
I have a website if they want to know a little bit more about the rest of my career.
Go ahead, go for it.
And it's just my name, DouglasEHughes.ca, because it's in Canada. My writing partner and I also write plays, by the way. And my writing partner and I have written 6 plays that have been published and produced. And the first 5 were published by Samuel French, which has now been taken over by a big conglomerate called Concord Theatricals.
Wow.
And if anybody wants to read up on our plays there, you can just go to concordtheatricals.com, type in my name in the author search thing, and you'll see all the stuff there. Our most recent play, Deadline, was published by Broadway Licensing. And the website for our play is playscripts.com. And again, if you just go to playscripts.com, type my name in the author search thing, and you'll find Deadline, and you can read up about it there. Actually, Deadline's interesting because it kind of has a sort of general thematic connection to From in a funny kind of way. It's a mystery about these 2 playwrights who find themselves trapped inside the murder mystery that they're writing.
Ooh, that's
So,
my kind of play.
like From, you have these 2 people who are transported to this other world. They have no idea how they got there. They have no idea how to get home, and people are getting killed. So they have to figure out how to get home before they get killed themselves.
In the murder mystery. That is awesome.
No,
That is awesome.
Yeah, that is so cool. And Doug, what I'll do is I'm also a independent documentary filmmaker. I'll send you a link to a couple of my films so you can check them out. As well. We'd love to see what you think about it. Candace is in one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, one of them is about the underground PEV culture in the city of Atlanta. So we interview about 12 people, and it's a really cool film. We did well, won some awards and stuff like that. I'll send you the links to it so you can check it out.
I'd love to see it.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think you probably had the most impactful 45 seconds
we've
ever seen in cinema history.
Okay, I have to say, and because this has come up a lot, and I always feel the need to say, you have to remember that 90% of that job was done for me before I got there. I mean, one of the reasons that scene was so impactful was because all of the bricks that were laid before we got to it, everything that brought us up to that moment, I mean, just the last episode alone has got all kinds of things that bring us to that moment. And I also wasn't the only one in it, I mean, you got Ian and Hannah there. And I mean, that scream of Hannah's at the end just sends chills down.
Chills.
But I mean, between that, the incredible job that the writers have done and Jack as a director did with it, and the script itself and the makeup and the hair, and I mean, I had nothing to do with any of that stuff. I just basically had to walk on, get the lines right, and not trip over the slimy rocks on my way down the hill.
There you go.
So I really take my hat off to the creative team who brought us to that moment, because it never would have been what it ended up being without all of their work,
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it's a team effort for sure.
Right.
Filmmaking.
And I guarantee you there are going to be some man in the yellow suit Halloween costumes
all over the
this
place.
year.
Yeah.
I was saying to somebody, I should do that myself next year, because
Yeah.
you look just like that guy. That's amazing.
Yeah, you should. Oh my God, that would be so
You
so
should
funny.
definitely be doing it.
I highly
Definitely
recommend that you do that.
Yeah, now I just got to invest in a yellow suit somewhere.
There you go. I'm sure they got one in Fromville for you.
If you want to go out.
Want to go back out.
Nah.
Just make sure you don't stop in front of the tree. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Thank you again, Doug. Thank
You're
you
very
so
welcome.
much for taking time out and talking to us.
It
We
was
really
my pleasure.
appreciate it.
We really enjoy it. And then we're going to go ahead and end the video, but hang out for a second with us, Doug.